I'm Sarah Martinez, 29, and the day I watched my boss hand my promotion to his 23-year-old nephew was the day I realized that loyalty means nothing when nepotism runs the show. 3 months of sleepless nights, countless client calls, and a campaign that boosted our revenue by 40%, all thrown away because blood runs thicker than merit. But what my boss didn't know was that I had already scheduled coffee with our biggest client for the next morning, and I wasn't planning to discuss the weather. Before we go deeper, please click the subscribe button and comment down below where you are watching from. The fluorescent lights in the conference room buzzed overhead like angry wasps as I sat across from Richard Blackwood, the man who had controlled my career trajectory for the past 4 years. His salt and pepper beard couldn't hide the smug satisfaction creeping across his face as he cleared his throat and adjusted his tie, a nervous habit I had observed countless times during our weekly meetings. Today felt different, though, charged with an energy that made my skin crawl and my stomach churn with anticipation. "Sarah, I want to thank you for your exceptional work on the Morrison account," he began, his voice carrying that patronizing tone that made my teeth clench involuntarily. "Your dedication and innovative approach to their rebranding campaign exceeded all expectations, and frankly, I don't think anyone else in this company could have pulled off what you accomplished." The words should have filled me with pride, should have been the prelude to the promotion I had been working toward since joining Blackwood Marketing 4 years ago. But something in his expression told me this conversation was heading in a direction I wouldn't like. I leaned forward slightly, my hands folded professionally on the polished conference table, maintaining the composed exterior that had served me well in this cutthroat industry. "Thank you, Richard. I'm proud of what we achieved with Morrison Industries. Their brand visibility increased by 67%, and their customer engagement metrics are off the charts. I believe this success demonstrates my readiness for the senior account director position we discussed last month." My voice remained steady despite the growing knot of unease in my chest, years of practice allowing me to project confidence even when doubt gnawed at my insides. Richard's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes, and I noticed how his fingers drummed against the table in a rhythm that seemed to mock my hopes. "About that position, Sarah, I have some exciting news to share with you. We've decided to bring some fresh blood into the senior management team, someone with new perspectives and innovative ideas that can take our company to the next level." The way he emphasized fresh blood made my skin crawl, and I could feel the disappointment building in my throat like a rising tide. "I'd like you to meet Tyler Blackwood, my nephew, who will be joining us as our new senior account director." The conference room door opened as if on cue, and in walked a young man who looked like he had stepped out of a college recruitment brochure. His blonde hair perfectly styled and his expensive suit hanging on his lean frame like it was borrowed from someone else's closet. Tyler's handshake was firm but brief, his blue eyes scanning me with the kind of casual assessment that suggested he was already measuring me for my subordinate role. The blood in my veins turned to ice water as the implications of this announcement crashed over me like a frozen wave. 4 years of 12-hour days, countless weekends spent in the office, missed family dinners and canceled vacation plans, all so I could climb the corporate ladder that had just been pulled out from under me by someone who probably still had his college textbooks on his desk. Tyler's resume, which Richard slid across the table with obvious pride, read like a participation trophy collection. Fresh out of business school, a summer internship at his father's law firm, and absolutely zero experience in marketing or client relations. Tyler graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern with his MBA, and he's eager to bring his academic knowledge to our team, Richard continued, his voice filled with the kind of paternal pride that made me want to vomit. I'm confident that with your experience and guidance, Sarah, you two will make an excellent team. Tyler will be overseeing the Morrison account moving forward, and I know you'll provide him with all the support he needs to succeed. Saw. The casual way he handed over my biggest achievement to someone who probably couldn't spell marketing strategy without spell check felt like a slap across the face. I forced my expression to remain neutral, years of corporate training kicking in even as my world crumbled around me. Congratulations, Tyler. I'm sure you'll find the Morrison account both challenging and rewarding. They're a sophisticated client with very specific expectations, but I'm confident you'll rise to the occasion. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I delivered them with the professionalism that had defined my career, even as every instinct screamed at me to walk out of that room and never look back. Tyler's response was exactly what I expected from someone who had never earned anything through merit: a cocky grin and a handshake that lasted a few seconds too long. Thanks, Sarah. I've heard great things about your work, and I'm looking forward to learning from someone with your experience. Uncle Richard has told me so much about the Morrison campaign, and I have some ideas about how we can take their brand to the next level." End quote. The casual way he referred to my boss as Uncle Richard in a professional setting told me everything I needed to know about his understanding of workplace dynamics. The meeting continued for another 20 minutes, but I barely heard the details about transition timelines and client handovers. My mind was racing, calculating the implications of this betrayal and formulating a response that would protect my career while expressing my professional disappointment. Richard's voice became background noise as I watched Tyler take notes in a leather-bound notebook that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. His handwriting neat and precise, like someone who had never had to take notes quickly during a crisis call with an angry client. When the meeting finally ended, I gathered my materials with deliberate precision, my movements controlled and professional despite the chaos raging in my head. "Richard, I appreciate you taking the time to discuss this transition with me. I'll prepare a comprehensive handover document for Tyler, including all client contact information, campaign strategies, and ongoing project timelines. I want to ensure a smooth transition that maintains our high standards of client service." My voice remained steady, betraying none of the fury that burned in my chest like molten steel. Walking back to my office felt like a death march, each step echoing in the hallway as my colleagues pretended not to notice the shell-shocked expression I was struggling to hide. My corner office, which had felt like a trophy just an hour ago, now seemed like a consolation prize, a reminder of how far I had climbed only to be knocked back down by corporate politics and family. Connections, the framed certificates on my wall, the awards from industry organizations, the photos of successful campaign launches, all of it felt meaningless in the face of Tyler's unearned promotion. I closed my office door and allowed myself exactly 5 minutes to process what had just happened. 5 minutes to feel the rage and disappointment before I had to put on my professional mask and figure out how to navigate this new reality. The Morrison Industries contract was worth $2.3 million annually, representing nearly 30% of our agency's total revenue. And now it was being handed over to someone whose biggest accomplishment was probably organizing his fraternity's social calendar. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jessica, my closest friend and the agency's creative director. "How did the meeting go? Please tell me you got the promotion." The simple question felt like a knife twisting in my gut, and I couldn't bring myself to type the truth just yet. Instead, I stared out my office window at the bustling city street below, watching people hurry along the sidewalks as they pursued their own ambitions and dreams, unaware that mine had just been crushed by corporate nepotism. The afternoon dragged on like a slow-motion nightmare as I tried to focus on my other accounts while processing the reality of my situation. Every email felt meaningless, every phone call seemed pointless, and every meeting felt like a waste of time when I knew that my career trajectory had just been derailed by someone who probably learned about marketing from YouTube videos. The worst part wasn't even the promotion itself, it was the casual way Richard had dismissed 4 years of dedication and success as if it meant nothing compared to Tyler's last name. By 5 o'clock, most of the office had emptied out, but I remained at my desk, staring at my computer screen while my mind raced with possibilities. The Morrison Industries file sat open in front of me, filled with months of research, strategy documents, and client communications that represented some of the best work of my career. Tomorrow, I would have to hand all of this over to Tyler and watch him take credit for my innovations, while I retreated back to junior-level accounts and started rebuilding my reputation from scratch. The cleaning crew had already begun their evening rounds when I finally made a decision that would change everything. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Marcus Morrison, CEO of Morrison Industries and the client who had personally requested to work with me after Bonn. Seeing my presentation 6 months ago, my finger hovered over the call button for several seconds as I considered the implications of what I was about to do. But the image of Tyler's smug face and Richard's dismissive attitude pushed me forward. Marcus, it's Sarah Martinez from Blackwood Marketing. I hope I'm not calling too late, but I wanted to reach out about something important. My voice was steady and professional, betraying none of the nervous energy that coursed through my body as I prepared to take the biggest risk of my career. I was wondering if you might have time for coffee tomorrow morning. There are some developments I think you should know about regarding your account. Marcus's warm laugh filled my ear, and I could hear the genuine affection in his voice as he responded. Sarah, you know you can call me any time. Your team has been incredible to work with, and frankly, you've exceeded every expectation we had when we signed with Blackwood. What time works for you? I'm free between 8 and 10 if that suits your schedule. The trust in his voice made my chest tighten with guilt, but I pushed forward, knowing that what I was about to do was necessary for both of our futures. We arranged to meet at Café Luna, a small coffee shop 3 blocks from both our offices that had become our unofficial meeting spot for casual conversations about campaign strategies and market trends. As I hung up the phone, I felt a mixture of excitement and terror that reminded me of the first time I had pitched to a major client, that same combination of confidence and fear that came with taking calculated risks in pursuit of bigger rewards. The drive home that evening was a blur of city lights and racing thoughts as I considered every possible outcome of tomorrow's meeting. My apartment felt different when I walked through the door, as if the familiar space had been transformed by the day's events into something foreign and uncertain. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, staring at my laptop screen as I drafted and deleted a dozen different resignation letters, each one expressing varying degrees of professionalism and barely contained rage. Sleep came in fragments that night, interrupted by anxiety dreams and scenarios that ranged from triumphant vindication to career-ending disaster. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tyler's face or heard Richard's condescending voice, and I found myself rehearsing conversations that might never happen, while my mind churned through possibilities and consequences like a computer running endless calculations. Morning arrived with gray clouds and the promise of rain, matching my mood as I prepared for what might be the most important coffee meeting of my career. I chose my outfit carefully, a navy blue blazer and pencil skirt that projected confidence and competence while remaining approachable and professional. My reflection in the mirror showed someone who looked calm and composed, giving no hint of the storm brewing beneath the surface or the revolutionary thoughts that had kept me awake half the night. The walk to Cafe Luna felt both endless and too short, each step bringing me closer to a conversation that could either resurrect my career or destroy what remained of my professional reputation. The familiar aroma of freshly ground coffee and baked pastries greeted me as I entered the cozy space, and I spotted Marcus immediately, his silver hair and expensive suit making him stand out among the casual morning crowd of freelancers and students. Marcus rose from his seat with the genuine warmth that had made him one of my favorite clients, his handshake firm and his smile reaching his eyes in a way that made me feel valued and respected. "Sarah, you look wonderful as always. I have to say, I'm curious about this mysterious meeting you've called. In all our time working together, you've never been anything but direct and straightforward, so I'm intrigued by the cloak and dagger approach." His tone was light and teasing, but I could see the genuine concern in his expression as he studied my face for clues. We settled into our usual corner booth, and I ordered my regular cappuccino while Marcus opted for black coffee, a choice that seemed to reflect his no-nonsense approach to business and life. The morning rush was beginning to pick up around us, providing a comfortable backdrop of ambient noise that would ensure our conversation remained private despite the public setting. "Marcus, I want to start by saying how much I've valued our working relationship over the past 6 months. Your trust in my vision for Morrison Industries has allowed me to create some of the best work of my career, and seeing your brand flourish has been incredibly rewarding both professionally and personally." My voice carried genuine emotion as I spoke, because despite the circumstances that had brought us here, my feelings about our collaboration were entirely sincere. His expression grew more serious as he leaned forward slightly, his business instincts clearly picking up on the underlying tension in my voice. "Sarah, you're starting to worry me. Is there a problem with the campaign? Has something gone wrong that I need to know about?" The concern in his voice was genuine, and I could see him mentally reviewing recent metrics and performance indicators, trying to identify whatever crisis had prompted this early morning meeting. I took a deep breath and chose my words carefully, knowing that what I said next would determine the trajectory of both our futures. "The campaign is performing beautifully, Marcus. In fact, the numbers from last month exceeded our most optimistic projections, and your brand recognition in the key demographics has improved beyond what we initially thought possible. The problem isn't with the work itself. It's with some changes happening at Blackwood Marketing that I believe will impact the quality of service you receive moving forward." End quote. Marcus's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips as he processed my words, his keen business mind immediately understanding that I was leading up to something significant. "What kind of changes are we talking about, Sarah? Are you being reassigned to a different account? Because I have to tell you, your leadership on this campaign has been exceptional, and I would hate to see that continuity disrupted." The protective tone in his voice reminded me why I had always enjoyed working with him, his genuine appreciation for good work making him a client worth fighting for. "Yesterday, I was informed that my role on your account is being transitioned to Richard Blackwood's nephew, Tyler, who will be taking over as Senior Account Director. Tyler is fresh out of business school with no practical experience in marketing or client relations, and while I'm sure he's academically qualified, I have serious concerns about his ability to maintain the level of strategic thinking and creative innovation that your brand requires." The words came out more diplomatically than I had practiced, but I couldn't hide the underlying frustration that colored my tone. Marcus set down his coffee cup with a sharp click that echoed my own feelings about the situation. "Are you telling me that after 6 months of exceptional results, Blackwood is replacing you with someone who has never worked in marketing? That seems like a remarkably poor business decision, especially considering the revenue your work has generated for both our companies." His voice carried the kind of controlled anger that successful executives master, the ability to express displeasure without losing professional composure. "I understand your concern, Marcus, and I share it completely. The decision was made without consulting me or apparently considering the impact on client relationships and campaign continuity. While I've been asked to provide transition support, I won't be involved in the strategic direction of your account moving forward, which means the innovative approaches and personal attention you've come to expect may not continue at the same level." I paused to let the implications sink in, watching as Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to frustration to something that looked like determination. The silence stretched between us for several long moments as Marcus processed this information, his fingers drumming against the table in a pattern that reminded me of his habit during particularly challenging business discussions. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the decisive tone that had built Morrison Industries into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. "Sarah, I want you to know that Morrison Industries chose Blackwood Marketing specifically because of your involvement and expertise. Your strategic vision and creative execution have been instrumental in our recent success, and frankly, I'm not interested in starting over with someone who doesn't understand our brand or our goals." I felt a flutter of hope in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral as I waited for him to continue. The cafe around us had grown busier as the morning progressed, but our corner booth felt like an island of intense focus amid the casual conversations and laptop keyboards clicking in the background. "What options do we have here, Sarah? Is there any way to ensure continuity of service, or are we looking at a complete restart of our marketing strategy with someone who doesn't understand what we've built together?" Marcus's question hung in the air between us, loaded with possibilities and implications that could reshape both our professional futures. This was the moment I had been building toward, the crucial juncture where I either played it safe and accepted my diminished role or took the leap that could transform my entire career. "Marcus, I need to be completely transparent with you about something. I've been considering leaving Blackwood Marketing to start my own consulting firm, and I wanted to discuss this with you because I believe it could benefit both of us in ways that our current arrangement cannot." Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly, but his expression remained thoughtful rather than surprised, as if he had been anticipating this possibility since the moment I called him. "Tell me more about what you're thinking, Sarah. I've always believed that the best business relationships are built on mutual benefit and shared success, so I'm interested in understanding how this change might work. Both of us." The words came easier now that I had crossed the line, my vision for the future becoming clearer as I articulated it aloud. "I've been developing a comprehensive business plan for an independent marketing consultancy that would focus on mid to large-sized companies looking for innovative brand strategies and personalized service. Unlike larger agencies that treat clients like account numbers, I would work with a select group of companies to provide the kind of dedicated attention and creative thinking that generates real results." Marcus leaned back in his seat, his expression shifting to the calculating look I had seen during our most productive strategy sessions. "And you're thinking that Morrison Industries would be your first client in this new venture?" I have to admit, the idea of working directly with you without the corporate overhead and bureaucracy has some appeal. What kind of service structure are you envisioning? I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app, where I had been sketching out preliminary ideas during my sleepless night. "I'm thinking of a retainer-based system that would provide Morrison Industries with dedicated strategic consulting, creative development, and campaign management at a cost that would be roughly 30% less than what you're currently paying Blackwood. Without the agency overhead and profit margins, I can offer premium service at a more competitive price point while still building a sustainable business model." The numbers clearly caught Marcus's attention, and I could see him running mental calculations as he considered the financial implications. 30% savings with improved service quality is certainly attractive from a business perspective. What about resources, though? How would you handle large-scale campaign implementation without the infrastructure of an established agency? His question was practical and showed he was seriously considering the proposal rather than just being polite. I've identified a network of freelance specialists in graphic design, web development, media buying, and content creation who I've worked with on various projects over the years. By building a flexible team structure, I can scale resources up or down based on project requirements while maintaining quality control and cost efficiency. For Morrison Industries specifically, I would also retain the services of 2 junior account coordinators I've worked with at Blackwood to ensure seamless transition and continuity of service." End quote. Marcus smiled for the first time since our conversation had turned serious, and I could see the entrepreneurial spirit that had built his company responding to the innovative approach I was proposing. "Sarah, I have to say that your timing is interesting. We've been evaluating our marketing spend across all vendors, and the idea of consolidating our primary brand strategy with someone we trust while reducing costs is very appealing. What kind of timeline are you thinking for making this transition?" My heart was racing now as I realized that Marcus was not only taking my proposal seriously, but seemed genuinely interested in moving forward. "I would need about 3 weeks to establish the business infrastructure, formalize contracts with key freelancers, and handle the legal aspects of setting up the consultancy. During that time, I would continue working at Blackwood to ensure that your current campaigns maintain momentum and that Tyler receives comprehensive transition documentation for any ongoing projects that might remain with the agency." "And after those 3 weeks?" Marcus's question was direct and business-focused, cutting through any remaining ambiguity about his level of interest. "After 3 weeks, Martinez Marketing Consultancy would be ready to take over comprehensive brand strategy and campaign management for Morrison Industries, with a service agreement that guarantees the same level of attention and innovation you've received from me, but with improved efficiency and cost savings." End quote. The name had just come to me as I spoke, but it felt right. Professional yet personal, established yet innovative. Marcus extended his hand across the table with the same decisive gesture he used to close major business deals. "Sarah, I think we have the foundation for a very productive partnership. I'll need to review this proposal with my board of directors, but based on our working relationship and the results you generated, I'm confident we can make this work. Can you prepare a formal proposal with timelines, service descriptions, and fee structures by the end of this week?" The handshake felt like stepping off a cliff and discovering I could fly, a moment of pure terror followed by exhilarating freedom as I realized I had just taken the first step toward transforming my entire career. "Absolutely, Marcus. I'll have a comprehensive proposal ready for your review by Friday morning, including detailed service agreements, cost comparisons, and transition timelines. Thank you for being open to this discussion and for considering this partnership." As we finished our coffee and prepared to return to our respective offices, Marcus's expression grew more serious again. "Sarah, I want you to know that this decision isn't just about cost savings or convenience. Your work has been exceptional, and the personal attention you've given to understanding our brand and our goals has made a real difference in our success. I'm looking forward to continuing that partnership in this new format." The walk back to my office felt completely different from the anxious journey I had made an hour earlier. Instead of uncertainty and dread, I felt energized by possibility and motivated by the challenge of building something new from the ground up. The gray morning had given way to bright sunshine, as if the weather was reflecting my transformed mood and renewed sense of purpose. Re-entering the Blackwood marketing office required a significant mental adjustment as I shifted from entrepreneur back to employee, at least for the next 3 weeks. The familiar surroundings looked different now, like a place I was visiting rather than somewhere I belonged, and I found myself observing the corporate culture and office dynamics with the detached perspective of someone who was already mentally somewhere else. Tyler was in my office when I returned, sitting behind my desk and scrolling through files on my computer with the casual entitlement that seemed to define his approach to everything. His blonde hair was still perfectly styled despite the early hour, and his expensive suit looked like it had been pressed that morning by a professional service. The sight of him in my chair, examining my work with the kind of superficial attention that missed all the important details, crystallized every doubt I had about his qualifications and abilities. "Oh, Sarah, there you are," he said without looking up from the screen, his tone suggesting that I had kept him waiting rather than arrived at my own office to find him using my computer without permission. "I was just reviewing some of these campaign files to get a better understanding of what you've been working on. I have to say, some of these strategies seem a bit outdated compared to what we learned in business school about current marketing trends." The casual dismissal of months of successful work by someone who had never managed a client relationship or developed a campaign strategy was so audacious that I almost laughed out loud. Instead, I maintained my professional composure and moved around to the side of my desk, noting that Tyler made no move to vacate my chair despite the obvious awkwardness of the situation. Those strategies generated a 40% increase in Morrison Industries' brand recognition and a 67% improvement in customer engagement metrics. I'd be happy to walk you through the research and development process that led to those results. Tyler finally looked up from the computer screen, his blue eyes carrying the kind of confidence that came from never having experienced real failure or criticism. "I'm sure they did fine for what they were, but I think there's room for improvement using some of the more contemporary approaches I studied at Northwestern: social media integration, influencer partnerships, viral marketing campaigns, that sort of thing. The business landscape is changing rapidly, and sometimes experience can actually be a limitation if it prevents you from seeing new opportunities." The implication that my 4 years of successful client management somehow made me less qualified than his theoretical knowledge was so ridiculous that I had to bite my tongue to keep from responding with the sarcasm his comment deserved. Instead, I nodded politely and began gathering the materials I would need for my morning meetings, silently counting down the days until I would never have to pretend to respect his uninformed opinions again. "Tyler, I think you'll find that Morrison Industries values consistency and proven results over trendy approaches that haven't been tested in their market segment. They're a conservative company with a sophisticated customer base, and their success has come from building trust through reliability, rather than chasing viral moments that might undermine their brand credibility." My explanation was patient and educational, as if I were mentoring a junior employee rather than supposedly collaborating with my new superior. Tyler's response was exactly what I expected from someone who had never dealt with a real client or handled a campaign crisis. "Sarah, I appreciate your perspective, but I think you might be underestimating the adaptability of established brands. Sometimes what looks like risk-taking actually strategic positioning for future growth. Morrison Industries might benefit from being more aggressive in their market approach, especially if we can show them data supporting more innovative strategies." End quote. The conversation continued for another 15 minutes, with Tyler demonstrating his theoretical knowledge while completely missing the practical implications of his suggestions. He talked about metrics he had never tracked, strategies he had never implemented, and client relationships he had never managed. all while maintaining the kind of supreme confidence that only comes from never having been tested by real-world challenges and consequences. When Tyler finally left my office to attend a meeting with Richard about his transition timeline, I closed the door and allowed myself a moment to process the surreal experience of being lectured about marketing by someone whose primary qualification was sharing DNA with the company owner. The irony wasn't lost on me that, while Tyler was busy explaining how he would improve my successful campaigns, I was actually implementing a plan that would make his theoretical knowledge irrelevant within 3 weeks. The rest of the day passed in a blur of routine tasks and meetings that felt increasingly meaningless as my mind focused on the business plan I needed to develop for Marcus's review. Every phone call, every email, every client interaction was filtered through the lens of my impending departure, and I found myself making mental notes about processes and relationships that would be relevant to my new consultancy. Jessica stopped by my office around 4 o'clock, her creative director instincts picking up on the change in my demeanor despite my efforts to maintain normal behavior. Her copper-red hair was pulled back in a messy bun that somehow looked both professional and artistic, and her paint-stained cardigan suggested she had been working on design concepts in her studio space down the hall. "Okay, spill it. You've had a weird energy all day, and that meeting with Richard yesterday obviously didn't go the way you expected. What's going on?" I debated how much to tell her, weighing my trust in our friendship against the potential complications of sharing my plans before they were finalized. Jessica had been my closest ally at Blackwood Marketing since I started 4 years ago, and her creative insights had contributed to many of my most successful campaigns. But involving her in my departure plans could put her in an awkward position with Richard and the company management. "The promotion went to Tyler, Richard's nephew," I said, keeping my voice neutral despite the bitter taste the words left in my mouth. "Fresh out of business school, no practical experience, but apparently that's less important than family connections when it comes to senior management positions." The disappointment in my voice was genuine, even though I was no longer devastated by the decision the way I had been yesterday. Jessica's expression shifted from curiosity to outrage as she processed the implications of my announcement. "Are you kidding me? After the Morrison campaign's success, after 4 years of bringing in new clients and exceeding every target they've set for you, they're giving your promotion to someone who probably can't even spell brand strategy without autocorrect?" Her voice rose slightly before she caught herself and lowered it to avoid attracting attention from the other offices. "That's corporate life, Jess. Merit doesn't always win over politics. And apparently, family connections trump everything else when it comes to advancement opportunities. I'm trying to stay positive and focus on what I can control rather than getting bitter about what I can't change." The words were true, but they didn't capture the excitement I felt about my alternative plan, or the satisfaction I was anticipating when Marcus's decision became public knowledge. Jessica studied my expression with the kind of intense focus she usually reserved for design problems, clearly sensing that there was more to the story than I was sharing. "Sarah, you're handling this way better than I would expect, considering how much this promotion meant to you. Either you're in complete denial, or you have something else up your sleeve that you're not telling me about." Her insight was uncomfortably accurate, but I couldn't risk sharing my plans until they were more concrete. "I'm just trying to be professional about a disappointing situation. Getting angry or causing drama won't change the decision. And I still have a job to do and clients to serve. Sometimes the best response to unfairness is to focus on doing excellent work and letting results speak for themselves." End quote. The response was diplomatic and mature, even though it obscured the revolutionary planning that was actually occupying my thoughts. We talked for a few more minutes about other office gossip and upcoming projects, but I could see that Jessica wasn't entirely convinced by my calm acceptance of the situation. Her creative intuition was clearly picking up on undercurrents that I wasn't ready to explain, but she respected my privacy enough not to push for details I wasn't prepared to share. That evening, I spread my laptop and notebooks across my kitchen table and began working on the formal business proposal that would determine whether my leap of faith became a successful landing or a career-ending crash. The process of translating my vision into concrete business terms was both exhilarating and terrifying, forcing me to consider practical details I had been avoiding while focusing on the emotional satisfaction, leaving Blackwood Marketing behind. The financial projections required careful calculation, balancing competitive pricing with sustainable profit margins while accounting for startup costs and the irregular cash flow that characterizes new businesses. I researched business insurance, professional liability coverage, and the legal requirements for establishing a marketing consultancy, discovering complexities I hadn't anticipated, but finding solutions that made the venture seem increasingly feasible. By midnight, I had drafted a 20-page proposal that covered service descriptions, fee structures, timeline projections, and risk management strategies. The document looked professional and comprehensive, but more importantly, it represented a concrete plan for transforming my career disappointment into entrepreneurial opportunity. Reading through the finished proposal, I felt a surge of pride and anticipation that had been missing from my work at Blackwood Marketing for months. The next morning brought a mix of excitement and nervousness as I prepared to submit my resignation letter and begin the process of transitioning my responsibilities to Tyler. The letter was brief and professional, expressing gratitude for opportunities while citing my decision to pursue independent consulting as a natural career progression rather than a response to recent personnel decisions. Richard's reaction to my resignation was exactly what I expected. Surprise followed by attempts to convince me to reconsider, peppered with subtle threats about the challenges of starting an independent business and the security advantages of remaining with an established agency. His paternal tone suggested he viewed my decision as an emotional overreaction rather than a calculated business strategy, which made his arguments easy to deflect with polite but firm responses about my commitment to exploring new opportunities. Sarah, I understand you're disappointed about the promotion, but starting your own business is a huge risk, especially in such a competitive industry. You have a secure position here with good benefits and growth potential, and I'd hate to see you throw that away because of one personnel decision that didn't go your way. Richard's voice carried the kind of condescending concern that made my skin crawl, but I maintained my professional composure and smiled politely. I appreciate your concern, Richard, but this decision isn't about the promotion. I've been considering independent consulting for some time now, and I feel ready to take on the challenges and opportunities that come with building my own business. I'm grateful for everything I've learned at Blackwood Marketing, and I want to ensure a smooth transition that maintains the high standards of client service that define our agency." End quote. My response was diplomatic and forward-looking, giving no indication of the satisfaction I felt at watching his attempts to retain me fail. The 2 weeks that followed were a careful balance of professional obligation and secret preparation as I finalized contracts with freelance partners, established business banking relationships, and completed the legal paperwork required to launch Martinez Marketing Consultancy. Tyler shadowed me during client meetings and strategy sessions, asking questions that revealed the depth of his inexperience while maintaining the confidence that seemed to be his defining characteristic. Marcus had responded positively to my formal proposal within 48 hours, and we had scheduled a contract signing meeting for the day after my official departure from Blackwood Marketing. The knowledge that my biggest risk was already paying off gave me the confidence to handle Tyler's incompetence with grace and humor, knowing that his failures would soon become Richard's problem rather than mine. The day Tyler took his first independent client call with Morrison Industries was a masterpiece of poorly managed expectations and misunderstood objectives. I listened from the conference room next door as he attempted to impress Marcus with buzzwords and theoretical frameworks that had no practical application to Morrison's specific brand challenges. The 20-minute call that should have been a routine check-in stretched to nearly an hour as Tyler struggled to answer basic questions about campaign metrics and future planning. Marcus's voice, even filtered through the conference room walls, carried the kind of polite frustration that indicated he was already reconsidering his relationship with Blackwood Marketing. When Tyler emerged from the call, his confident demeanor had been replaced by obvious confusion and barely concealed panic as he realized that real client management was significantly more challenging than his business school case studies had suggested. "Sarah, I think there might be some communication issues with the Morrison account," Tyler said, his voice carrying the first notes of uncertainty I had heard since he arrived at the company. Marcus seemed to have some unrealistic expectations about reporting frequency and strategic input, and I'm not sure he understands the normal boundaries of an agency-client relationship. The attempt to blame Marcus for Tyler's own inadequacy was so transparent that I had to work to keep my expression neutral. "Marcus is actually one of our most reasonable clients, Tyler. He's been in business for over 20 years and understands exactly what level of service his marketing investment should provide. The expectations he outlined are completely standard for an account of Morrison Industries' size and scope." I kept my voice patient and educational, even though I was internally celebrating the first crack in Tyler's overconfident facade. Tyler's response revealed just how unprepared he was for the reality of client management. But some of the metrics he was asking about seem overly detailed, and he wanted to discuss strategy modifications that weren't part of the original campaign proposal. In business school, we learned that scope creep is a major problem in client relationships, and it's important to establish clear boundaries from the beginning. The textbook language couldn't mask his fundamental misunderstanding of how successful client partnerships actually function. "Tyler, those weren't scope creep requests. They were normal strategic discussions that demonstrate Marcus's engagement with the campaign and his trust in our expertise. When a client asks detailed questions about performance metrics, that's a sign that they value our work and want to understand how to maximize their investment. The strategy modifications he mentioned are natural evolutions based on market response, not additional services that require separate billing." My explanation was thorough and patient, but I could see from Tyler's expression that he was struggling to process the difference between theoretical knowledge and practical application. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with Tyler gradually realizing that his academic preparation had left him completely unprepared for the nuanced reality of managing sophisticated business relationships. His questions became more desperate, and his confidence crumbled further as he began to understand the scope of responsibility he had inherited along with his unearned promotion. Over the following week, Tyler's interactions with other clients followed a similar pattern of overconfidence followed by confusion and barely contained panic. The Hendricks account, a mid-sized retail chain that had been one of my most stable relationships, canceled 2 scheduled meetings after Tyler attempted to implement social media strategies that were completely inappropriate for their target demographic and brand positioning. The Kumar Technology account, a B2B software company that required highly technical marketing approaches, nearly terminated their contract after Tyler suggested an influencer partnership campaign that demonstrated his complete lack of understanding about their industry and customer base. I spent an entire afternoon doing damage control, explaining to the client that the suggestion had been premature and that we would be taking a more conservative approach moving forward. Richard's attempts to shield Tyler from the consequences of his mistakes became increasingly obvious and increasingly ineffective as client complaints began filtering back to the senior management team. The other senior directors started asking pointed questions about account stability and client satisfaction metrics, and I could see the worry lines deepening around Richard's eyes as he realized the magnitude of the problem he had created. My final week at Blackwood Marketing was a strange combination of professional obligation and private satisfaction as I completed transition documents while watching Tyler's failures multiply. Compound. The Morrison Industries account, which had been my pride and joy, was showing early signs of serious strain as Tyler's inexperience clashed with Marcus's sophisticated expectations and strategic thinking. Jessica had figured out that something significant was happening, though she still didn't know the specific details of my departure plans. Her creative intuition was picking up on the energy shift in the office, and she made several attempts to get me to explain what felt different about my behavior and attitude. "Sarah, you're acting like someone who knows a secret that everyone else is going to find out soon. Either you're planning something dramatic, or you've achieved some kind of Zen acceptance that seems completely out of character for someone who just lost their dream promotion." Her observation was uncomfortably accurate, but I deflected with humor and general comments about moving forward and focusing on new opportunities. The truth was that I was counting down the days until I could reveal the full scope of what had been set in motion by Richard's nepotistic decision and Tyler's incompetence. On my final Friday at Blackwood Marketing, I submitted my completed transition documents and cleaned out my office with the ceremonial gravity that marks the end of any significant chapter in one's career. The awards and certificates came down from the walls, the personal photos were packed in boxes, and the accumulated evidence of 4 years of professional growth was reduced to a few cartons that fit easily in my car. Tyler's goodbye was awkward and brief, his relief at no longer having to pretend to value my input obvious despite his attempts to maintain professional courtesy. "Thanks for all the help with the transition, Sarah. I'm sure I'll figure out the rest as I go along. Good luck with your consulting thing." The casual dismissal of my new business as a consulting thing perfectly captured his inability to recognize the significance of what was about to happen. Richard's farewell was more elaborate but equally hollow, filled with corporate platitudes about keeping in touch and maintaining professional relationships, while his eyes already showed the worry of someone who was beginning to understand the scope of the mistake he had made. "Sarah, you've been a valuable member of our team, and I hope this consulting venture works out for you. If things don't go as planned, you know there's always a place for you here at Blackwood Marketing." The offer was meant to sound generous, but it actually revealed Richard's assumption that my departure was an impulsive mistake that I would eventually regret and want to correct. His inability to imagine that I might actually succeed in building something better than what I was leaving behind was both insulting and oddly encouraging, confirming that he had no idea what was coming next. Monday morning of my first week as an independent consultant felt like stepping into a completely different universe, one where my decisions and strategies would determine my success or failure without the safety net of corporate employment or the limitations of corporate bureaucracy. My home office, hastily assembled over the weekend, looked professional enough for video calls while maintaining the personal touches that reminded me why I had taken this enormous risk. The contract signing meeting with Marcus took place at Morrison Industries' downtown headquarters, a modern glass building that reflected my own sense of entering a new phase of my career. Marcus's executive conference room, with its panoramic city views and mahogany table, provided an appropriately impressive setting for what felt like one of the most important business meetings of my life. "Sarah, I have to tell you that this past week has been very illuminating in terms of my decision to move Morrison Industries' marketing relationship to your new consultancy. Marcus began, his tone carrying the kind of serious satisfaction that indicated good news was coming. Tyler's attempts to manage our account have confirmed every concern I had about the transition, and frankly, his approach to client communication has been unprofessional and ineffective. The contract signing process was surprisingly straightforward, with Marcus having already reviewed and approved all terms through his legal team. The annual retainer agreement was worth $350,000, representing not only financial security for my new business, but also validation that my strategic approach and client relationships had real monetary value independent of Blackwood Marketing's corporate structure. Marcus, I want you to know how much I appreciate your confidence in this new partnership. I'm committed to providing Morrison Industries with the same level of strategic thinking and creative innovation that made our previous collaboration successful, but with the added benefits of direct access and customized service that larger agencies simply cannot provide." End quote. My words were professional and confident, but they couldn't convey the depth of gratitude I felt for his willingness to take a risk on my untested business. The handshake that sealed our agreement felt like crossing a threshold into a completely different category of professional relationship, one based on mutual respect and shared success rather than corporate hierarchy and bureaucratic limitations. As I walked out of Morrison Industries headquarters with a signed contract in my briefcase, I felt the kind of exhilaration that comes from successfully executing a plan that others would have considered impossibly risky. The impact of Morrison Industries' departure from Blackwood Marketing became apparent within days, as Richard scrambled to understand how he had lost his most valuable client and what it meant for the agency's financial stability and industry reputation. The official explanation, communicated through carefully worded emails and damage control phone calls, cited a desire for more specialized service and strategic focus, but the real message was clear to anyone who understood the relationship between client satisfaction and business success. Tyler's reaction to losing the Morrison account was a fascinating study in cognitive dissonance, as he attempted to rationalize the failure while maintaining his belief in his own competence and strategic vision. His explanations to Richard and the other senior directors focused on Morrison Industries' unrealistic expectations and communication style incompatibilities, completely avoiding any acknowledgement of his own role in the relationship breakdown. The ripple effects extended beyond just the Morrison account, as other clients began questioning the stability and consistency of service they could expect from Blackwood Marketing. The Hendricks retail chain, still smarting from Tyler's inappropriate social media suggestions, chose not to renew their contract when it expired at the end of the month. Kumar Technology reduced their retainer by 40% and shifted their most important campaigns to a competitor that specialized in B2B technology marketing. Within 6 weeks of my departure, Blackwood Marketing had lost nearly $1.2 million in annual revenue, representing approximately 25% of their total client base, and forcing Richard to make difficult decisions about staffing and overhead costs that he had never anticipated when he decided to promote his nephew over merit-based qualifications. The Industry Gossip Network, which operates with the efficiency of a well-tuned information distribution system, ensured that the story of Tyler's failures and client losses spread quickly through the marketing community. Professional contacts who had worked with me at Blackwood Marketing began reaching out to discuss potential consulting opportunities, and several former colleagues expressed interest in joining my growing network of freelance specialists. Jessica was one of the first to approach me about the possibility of working together outside the constraints of corporate employment, her creative talents perfectly complementing my strategic focus in ways that could benefit both our careers. "Sarah, I've been watching what you've built in just 2 months, and I have to say that it looks a lot more interesting than what's happening at Blackwood these days. Would you be open to discussing some kind of partnership arrangement that could work for both of us?" The conversation with Jessica opened up possibilities I hadn't fully considered when I was focused solely on launching my own consultancy. Her creative expertise and established relationships with graphic designers, photographers, and content creators could significantly expand the services I could offer clients while providing her with the creative freedom and financial opportunity that corporate employment rarely delivers. By the end of my third month as an independent consultant, Martinez Marketing Consultancy had signed contracts with 4 additional clients, including 2 companies that had specifically sought me out after hearing about Morrison Industries' success with the new service model. The revenue projections I had included in my original business plan were already being exceeded, and I was facing the pleasant challenge of scaling operations to meet demand while maintaining the personalized service quality that differentiated my offering from larger agencies. Tyler's tenure as senior account director lasted exactly 4 months before Richard was forced to acknowledge that the nepotistic promotion had been a catastrophic mistake that was threatening the survival of the agency itself. The termination was handled quietly, with Tyler being transitioned to a vaguely defined business development role that kept him on the payroll while removing him from any direct client contact or strategic SAN. Responsibility. The official explanation for Tyler's demotion focused on organizational restructuring and the need for more experienced leadership during challenging market conditions. But everyone in the office understood the real reason for the change. The damage to Richard's credibility and judgment was severe, with several senior employees beginning to question other decisions and policies that had previously gone unexamined. 6 months after leaving Blackwood Marketing, I received a phone call from Richard that was both personally satisfying and professionally enlightening. His voice carried a mixture of defeat and grudging respect as he acknowledged the success of my consulting business and the impact of his decision to promote Tyler over me. "Sarah, I want you to know that I recognize I made a mistake in how I handled the senior account director position. Your success with your own business has been impressive, and I realize now that we lost something valuable. When you decided to leave, the apology was too little and too late to change anything, but it provided a sense of closure that I hadn't realized I needed." My response was gracious but firm, acknowledging his call while making it clear that I had moved beyond any resentment about past decisions. "Richard, I appreciate you reaching out, and I hope things improve for Blackwood Marketing. Sometimes what feels like a setback at the time actually opens doors to opportunities we never would have discovered otherwise." The conversation lasted only a few minutes, but it represented a final resolution to the professional disappointment that had initially motivated my departure. What had begun as a reaction to unfair treatment had evolved into something much more significant, a successful business built on merit, client relationships, and strategic thinking rather than corporate politics and, quote, family connections. 1 year after Richard handed my promotion to his unqualified nephew, Martinez Marketing Consultancy was generating over $800,000 in annual revenue while working with a carefully selected client base that valued innovation, personal attention, measurable results. The business had grown beyond my initial projections while maintaining the core values and service philosophy that had motivated me to leave corporate employment in the first place. Tyler, meanwhile, had left Blackwood Marketing entirely after his business development role proved to be as much of a mismatch for his skills as client management had been. According to industry contacts, he had moved to his father's law firm, where his lack of marketing experience was presumably less of a liability than it had been in the advertising world. The story of my departure from Blackwood Marketing and the subsequent success of my consulting business became something of a legend in the local marketing community, cited as an example of how merit-based achievement ultimately triumphs over nepotism and corporate politics. Speaking engagements at industry events and business schools provided opportunities to share insights about entrepreneurship, client relationships, and the importance of taking calculated risks in pursuit of, quote, professional fulfillment. But perhaps the most satisfying aspect of the entire experience was the relationships I had built with clients who valued my expertise and trusted my strategic thinking. Marcus Morrison remained one of my closest business partners, and Morrison Industries continued to exceed their marketing objectives quarter after quarter. The success we achieved together validated every risk I had taken and every sleepless night I had spent building something from nothing. The corner office I had coveted at Blackwood Marketing seemed insignificant compared to the freedom and autonomy I had discovered in building my own business. Instead of fighting for recognition within someone else's hierarchy, I had created an environment where my ideas and strategies could flourish without the limitations of corporate bureaucracy or the interference of unqualified family members. Looking back on that pivotal coffee meeting with Marcus, I realized that what had felt like the most dangerous conversation of my career had actually been the beginning of the most rewarding chapter of my professional life. The promotion I had lost to Tyler's nepotistic appointment had been replaced by something far more valuable. The opportunity to build a business that reflected my values, rewarded my efforts, and provided the kind of meaningful work that makes early mornings and late nights feel like choices rather than obligations. The final irony of the entire situation was that Richard's decision to prioritize family loyalty over professional competence had actually done me a favor, forcing me out of a comfortable but limiting situation and into an entrepreneurial adventure that exceeded every expectation I had dared to imagine. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's building something so successful that the original slight becomes irrelevant by comparison. As I sat in my expanded office space 2 years later, reviewing proposals from potential clients and planning strategic initiatives that would have been impossible within the constraints of agency employment, I reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought me to this point. The nephew who had stolen my promotion had inadvertently given me something far more valuable: the motivation to discover what I was truly capable of achieving when the only limitations were the ones I placed on myself. The business cards on my desk read, Sarah Martinez, founder and principal consultant, Martinez Marketing Consultancy. Titles that carried more meaning and satisfaction than senior account director ever could have provided. The success wasn't just financial, though the revenue numbers were certainly gratifying. It was the knowledge that I had built something meaningful from scratch using nothing but determination, expertise, and the willingness to take risks that others considered too dangerous to attempt. The story that had begun with disappointment and betrayal had transformed into one of triumph and vindication, proving that sometimes the best response to unfair treatment isn't anger or resentment, but the quiet satisfaction of building something so successful that the original injustice becomes a footnote in a much larger story of achievement and professional fulfillment. In the end, Tyler's unearned promotion had lasted 4 months and destroyed several client relationships, while my earned success continued to grow and thrive years later. The difference between merit-based achievement and nepotistic appointment had been demonstrated in the most definitive way possible, through measurable results and sustainable success that spoke louder than any corporate title or family connection ever could. The third year of Martinez Marketing Consultancy brought challenges I hadn't anticipated when I was focused solely on escaping Blackwood Marketing's toxic environment. Rapid growth meant hiring full-time employees rather than relying entirely on freelance contractors, and suddenly I found myself responsible for other people's livelihoods in ways that agency employment had, quote, never required. The transition from solo consultant to business owner demanded new skills in human resources, financial management, and operational planning that my marketing background had only partially prepared me to handle. Jessica's decision to join the consultancy as creative director had proven to be one of my smartest business moves, but it also meant navigating the complexities of friendship and professional hierarchy in ways that tested both our relationship and our business acumen. Her artistic vision elevated every campaign we produced, but her tendency toward perfectionism sometimes clashed with client deadlines and budget constraints in ways that required diplomatic management, clear communication. The office space we leased in the Arts District reflected the company culture I wanted to build: creative, collaborative, and focused on results rather than corporate rituals and meaningless hierarchy. Exposed brick walls displayed our most successful campaign materials alongside local artwork from emerging artists, creating an environment that inspired innovation while maintaining professional credibility. The conference room featured a living wall of plants that required weekly maintenance but created the kind of atmosphere that made clients feel like they were partnering with something fresh and forward-thinking. Marcus Morrison's confidence in my business had extended beyond our initial contract into strategic partnerships that neither of us had envisioned during that pivotal coffee meeting 3 years earlier. Morrison Industries had acquired 2 smaller companies in related market segments, and each acquisition brought their marketing needs to my consultancy, creating a revenue stream that provided stability while allowing us to take creative risks with newer clients who might not have been willing to work with a completely untested agency. The expansion of our client base had attracted attention from industry publications and business journals, leading to feature articles about alternative business models in the marketing industry and the advantages of boutique consultancies over traditional agencies. The recognition was personally gratifying, but more importantly, it generated inquiries from potential clients who had read about our approach and wanted to explore whether our methods might work for their specific challenges and objectives. One of those inquiries came from Rebecca Chen, the CEO of a sustainable fashion startup that was struggling to differentiate itself in an increasingly crowded market of environmentally conscious brands. Her company, Verde Threads, had excellent products and admirable values, but their marketing efforts lacked the strategic focus and creative execution needed to break through the noise of competitors with larger budgets and more established market presence. The initial consultation with Rebecca revealed challenges that perfectly matched our consultancy's strengths: a sophisticated product that needed storytelling expertise, a target demographic that valued authenticity over flashy advertising, and a budget that required creative efficiency rather than expensive media buys. The campaign we developed over the following months became one of our most successful case studies, demonstrating how strategic thinking and creative execution could generate significant brand awareness without requiring massive financial investment. Verde Thread's success story attracted attention from other startups and mid-sized companies that were looking for marketing partners who understood the unique challenges of building brands without unlimited resources. The referral network that developed from satisfied clients became our most valuable source of new business, validating the relationship-focused approach that had motivated my departure from corporate employment in the first place. The contrast between my current professional satisfaction and the frustration I had experienced at Blackwood Marketing was highlighted during a chance encounter with former colleagues at an industry conference in Chicago. The Marketing Summit brought together professionals from across the Midwest, and I found myself face to face with several people who had witnessed my departure and Tyler's subsequent failures without fully understanding the strategic planning that had motivated my decisions. Amanda Rodriguez, who had been hired as a junior account coordinator shortly before my departure, approached me during the networking reception with the kind of barely contained excitement that suggested she had been waiting for this opportunity. Her career had stagnated at Blackwood Marketing, trapped in entry-level responsibilities despite demonstrating creative potential that the agency's rigid hierarchy prevented her from fully developing or showcasing. Sarah, I've been following your success with the consultancy, and I have to say that what you've built looks amazing compared to what's happening at Blackwood these days, Amanda said, her voice carrying the frustration of someone who felt undervalued and overlooked by an organization that prioritized politics over performance. Would you be interested in grabbing coffee tomorrow morning? I'd love to hear more about how you made the transition to independent consulting. The coffee meeting with Amanda revealed the ongoing dysfunction at Blackwood Marketing, where Richard's credibility had never fully recovered from the Tyler debacle and subsequent client losses. Employee morale remained low, with several talented professionals leaving for competitors or starting their own businesses after watching merit-based advancement opportunities disappear in favor of safe, unimaginative choices that protected Richard's remaining client relationships. Amanda's account of recent developments painted a picture of an agency in slow decline, losing ground to more agile competitors while clinging to outdated practices and hierarchical structures that prevented innovation and creative risk-taking. The Morrison Industries loss had been followed by the departure of two other major clients, forcing layoffs and budget cuts that created a cycle of diminished service quality and further client dissatisfaction. The worst part is watching talented people like Jennifer Walsh and David Kin leave because they can see that there's no real future for advancement based on merit, Amanda explained, her frustration evident as she described the exodus of creative talent that had followed my departure. Richard keeps promoting people based on seniority and office politics rather than actual results, and everyone can see that the agency is falling behind industry standards for innovation and client service. The conversation with Amanda reminded me how much my professional life had improved since leaving the toxic environment of corporate favoritism and bureaucratic limitations. Martinez Marketing Consultancy had grown to 8 full-time employees, each chosen for their specific expertise and commitment to excellence rather than their ability to navigate office politics or their family connections to company leadership. The team we had assembled represented the kind of collaborative environment I had always wanted to work in. Specialists who understood their roles while being willing to contribute ideas and expertise across traditional departmental boundaries. Elena Vasquez, our data analytics specialist, brought quantitative rigor to campaign planning that elevated our strategic recommendations beyond intuition and guesswork. Michael Foster, our content strategist, had a gift for translating complex business concepts into compelling narratives that resonated with target audiences across diverse industry sectors. The quarterly team meetings we held in our conference room felt completely different from the corporate gatherings I remembered from Blackwood Marketing, where information flowed downward through hierarchical channels and employee input was solicited but rarely implemented. Our meetings were genuine collaboration sessions where everyone's perspective was valued and strategic decisions emerged from collective expertise rather than executive mandate. The financial success of the consultancy had exceeded every projection I had included in my original business plan, but more importantly, the work itself remained engaging and meaningful in ways that corporate employment had never provided. Each new client brought unique challenges that required creative problem-solving and strategic innovation, preventing the kind of repetitive routine that had made my final months at Blackwood Marketing feel like professional stagnation. The Verdi Threads campaign had won 2 industry awards for creative excellence and measurable results, recognition that brought additional credibility to our growing reputation while providing case study material for presentations at conferences and business schools. The awards themselves were less important than what they represented. validation that our approach to client service and strategic thinking was producing results that industry professionals recognized as exceptional. The 4th anniversary of my departure from Blackwood Marketing passed without fanfare, marked only by a private reflection on how dramatically my professional life had changed since that disappointing meeting in Richard's conference room. The consultancy now occupied 3 floors of our Arts District building, employed 15 people, and maintained a waiting list of potential clients who had heard about our work through referrals and industry recognition. Tyler's subsequent career moves had become something of a cautionary tale in local business circles, though I learned about his failures through industry gossip rather than direct contact. After his brief stint in his father's law firm, he had attempted to start his own marketing consultancy, apparently believing that his Northwestern MBA and family connections would be sufficient to compete with established agencies and experienced independent consultants. The failure of Tyler's business venture had been swift and decisive, lasting barely 6 months before he was forced to close operations and seek employment with a large corporation where his lack of practical experience could be hidden within bureaucratic structures and collective care. Responsibility. The clients he had managed to attract initially were quickly lost when his theoretical knowledge proved inadequate for solving real business challenges and managing complex client relationships. The lessons from Tyler's failures extended beyond personal satisfaction into valuable insights about the differences between academic preparation and practical expertise. Business school had provided him with frameworks and vocabulary, but it hadn't taught him how to read client needs, adapt strategies based on market feedback, or build the trust relationships that sustain long-term business partnerships. The speaking engagements that had grown out of our business success provided opportunities to share these insights with aspiring entrepreneurs and marketing professionals who were considering similar career transitions. The stories I told during these presentations focused less on personal vindication and more on the strategic thinking and relationship building that had made the consultancy successful, though audiences always seemed most interested in the dramatic elements of leaving corporate employment to compete directly with former employers. One particularly memorable presentation at Northwestern Business School, Tyler's alma mater, drew an audience of MBA students who were eager to understand how theoretical knowledge could be translated into practical business success. The irony of speaking at the same institution that had produced Tyler's overconfidence wasn't lost on me, but it provided an opportunity to emphasize the importance of humility, continuous learning, and respect for experienced professionals regardless of their formal education credentials. The questions from Northwestern students revealed both the ambition and the limitations of academic business training, with many inquiries focusing on frameworks and metrics rather than the relationship skills and emotional intelligence that often determine entrepreneurial success. My responses attempted to bridge the gap between classroom theory and business reality, emphasizing that sustainable success requires both analytical thinking and interpersonal skills that can't be fully developed, case studies and simulations. The 5th year of Martinez Marketing Consultancy brought new challenges in the form of larger clients with more complex needs and higher expectations for strategic sophistication and operational excellence. The regional healthcare system that became our largest account required coordinating marketing efforts across multiple service lines, geographic markets, and regulatory environments in ways that tested every system and process we had developed for smaller, more straightforward client relationships. The healthcare account also brought our first major crisis when a data breach at one of their facilities required rapid response, communication strategies that protected patient privacy while maintaining public trust in the organization's commitment to security and transparency. The 72 hours following the breach discovery became a masterclass in crisis management, requiring round-the-clock coordination between our team, the healthcare system's legal counsel, regulatory Tory-Don, agencies, and media outlets, covering the story, the successful resolution of the crisis, which minimized reputational damage while ensuring full compliance with reporting requirements and patient notification protocols, demonstrated our capability to handle sophisticated challenges that went far beyond traditional marketing campaigns and brand development projects. The healthcare system's board of directors expressed their appreciation through a contract extension and referrals to other healthcare organizations that had observed our crisis management expertise. The crisis management success opened an entirely new service line for the consultancy, as other clients began requesting contingency planning and reputation management services that prepared them for potential PAGRA challenges before they occurred. The proactive approach to risk management aligned perfectly with our strategic philosophy of building sustainable success through careful planning and relationship maintenance rather than reactive damage control. Jessica's creative leadership during the healthcare crisis had been particularly impressive, as she coordinated visual communication materials and social media responses that maintained consistent messaging while adapting to rapidly changing circumstances and regulatory guidance. Her ability to work effectively under extreme pressure while maintaining high creative standards had cemented her position as an indispensable partner in the business, rather than simply a talented employee. The expansion into crisis management and reputation services required additional expertise in legal communication, regulatory compliance, and media relations that stretched our existing team capabilities. The hiring process for specialized consultants brought us into contact with former corporate communications professionals who had grown frustrated with large agency bureaucracy and were eager to join a more agile, client-focused organization. Patricia Williams, our new crisis communications specialist, had spent 8 years managing corporate reputation issues for a multinational consulting firm before becoming disillusioned with the impersonal approach that large organizations took toward client relationships. Her decision to join our team reflected the same values-driven career change that had motivated my own departure from corporate employment. Though her transition was smoother because she joined an established business rather than starting from scratch. The team chemistry that developed around our expanded services felt like the natural evolution of the collaborative culture we had built from the beginning, with new specialists integrating seamlessly into existing processes while contributing expertise that elevated our overall service quality. The combination of strategic marketing, creative development, and crisis management created a comprehensive offering that differentiated us from both traditional agencies and other independent consultancies. The 6th anniversary of leaving Blackwood Marketing coincided with our consultancy's largest contract signing ceremony, a celebration held in our conference room with key team members and long-term clients who had become genuine business partners over the years. Marcus Morrison's presence at the celebration felt particularly meaningful, as his initial leap of faith had made everything else possible, and his continued confidence in our capabilities had sustained us through challenging growth periods. The contract being celebrated represented a 3-year partnership with a technology company that was preparing for an initial public offering, requiring comprehensive marketing support, investor relations communication, and brand development that would position them for post-IPO growth. The complexity and scope of the engagement demonstrated how far we had evolved from the single-client consulting practice that had begun with my departure from corporate employment. The financial terms of the IPO contract guaranteed our business stability for the foreseeable future, while providing resources for strategic investments in technology, talent, and operational infrastructure that would support continued growth. The success metrics built into the agreement aligned our compensation with the client's business objectives, creating the kind of partnership structure that motivated exceptional performance rather than simply prowl. Adequate service delivery. Looking around the conference room during the contract celebration, I reflected on how the team assembled around our table represented everything I had hoped to achieve when I first imagined building and buy. Alternative to traditional agency employment. Each person had been chosen for their expertise and character rather than their willingness to navigate corporate politics, and their collective contributions had created something far more valuable than the sum of, quote, individual talents. The conversation during the celebration naturally turned to future plans and strategic objectives for the consultancy's continued evolution, with team members contributing ideas about new service lines, geographic expansion, and partnership opportunities that could enhance our client offerings while maintaining the personal attention and creative innovation that defined our brand identity. The geographic expansion discussion was particularly intriguing, as several clients had expressed interest in extending our services to their operations in other markets, creating opportunities for regional offices or partnership arrangements with complementary consultancies in different cities. The challenge would be maintaining our culture and service quality while scaling operations beyond the direct oversight that had been possible during our local market development. Alina's suggestion about developing proprietary analytics tools reflected her vision for leveraging our data expertise into intellectual property that could differentiate our services while creating additional revenue streams through licensing arrangements with other consultancies or technology platforms. The idea represented a sophisticated evolution from service provider to technology developer that could significantly expand our market opportunity and competitive positioning. Michael's proposal for a content marketing certification program addressed the increasing demand we had observed for marketing education and professional development among our clients' internal teams. The program would generate revenue while building stronger relationships with existing clients and creating networking opportunities with potential future partners and customers. The celebration concluded with a toast to the journey that had brought us to this point and the opportunities that lay ahead. But privately, I found myself thinking about the personal growth that had accompanied the business success over the past 6 years. The confidence and leadership skills I had developed through building the consultancy felt completely different from the corporate competence I had cultivated at Blackwood Marketing, rooted in authentic relationships and proven results rather than hierarchical positioning and political maneuvering. The contrast became even more apparent the following week, when I received an unexpected invitation to serve on the board of directors for the Regional Marketing Association, a position that would provide industry visibility while contributing to professional development initiatives for emerging marketing talent. The invitation reflected the reputation we had built within the business community, but it also represented an opportunity to influence industry standards and practices in ways that aligned with our values. Driven approach to client service. The board position would require time investment that needed to be balanced against business responsibilities, but the strategic value of industry leadership and networking opportunities justified the commitment. The other board members represented a cross-section of marketing professionals from various agency sizes and specializations, creating potential for collaboration and knowledge sharing that could benefit both our business and the broader professional community. The first board meeting I attended focused on developing mentorship programs for young marketing professionals, an initiative that resonated strongly with my own experience of feeling undervalued and overlooked at Blackwood Marketing. The discussion about creating pathways for merit-based advancement and skill development felt like an opportunity to influence systemic changes that could prevent other talented professionals from experiencing the kind of career stagnation and political frustration that had motivated my own departure from corporate employment. My contribution to the mentorship program discussion drew on lessons learned from building our consultancy's collaborative culture and performance-based advancement policies, approaches that prioritized individual growth and contribution over seniority or political connections. The other board members seemed genuinely interested in alternative organizational models that could improve retention and job satisfaction while maintaining competitive performance standards. The program we developed over subsequent meetings created structured opportunities for emerging professionals to work directly with experienced marketing leaders on real client projects, providing practical learning experiences that supplemented formal education while building professional networks based on shared accomplishments rather than social connections or family relationships. The mentorship initiative launched 6 months later with enthusiastic participation from both emerging professionals and established marketing leaders who were eager to share expertise while staying connected to fresh perspectives and innovative approaches. The program's success generated positive media coverage for the Marketing Association, while reinforcing our consultancy's reputation as a values-driven organization committed to industry, advancement, and professional development. The 7th year of Martinez Marketing Consultancy began with reflection on how much had changed since that fateful coffee meeting with Marcus Morrison. When the future of my career depended entirely on the success of a single conversation and a business plan that existed only in my imagination. The organization we had built now employed 22 people across multiple specializations, maintained offices in 3 cities, and had been recognized with numerous industry awards for both creative excellence and business innovation. The personal satisfaction that came from building something meaningful and sustainable had far exceeded any corporate advancement or recognition I might have achieved by remaining at Blackwood Marketing, but the real reward was seeing other talented professionals thrive in an environment that valued their contributions and supported their professional growth. The culture we had created attracted exceptional people who might otherwise have been overlooked or undervalued by larger organizations focused on credentials rather than capability. The success story that had begun with corporate disappointment and personal risk-taking had evolved into something much larger than revenge or vindication, becoming a demonstration of how merit-based organizations could compete successfully against established competitors while creating more fulfilling professional experiences for everyone involved. The journey from frustrated employee to successful entrepreneur had required courage, persistence, and strategic thinking, but the rewards had justified every risk and sacrifice along the way. As I prepared for another day of client meetings, strategic planning sessions, and team collaboration in the offices we had built from nothing, I realized that Tyler's unearned promotion had inadvertently given me the greatest gift of my professional life: the motivation to discover what I was truly capable of achieving when freed from the limitations of corporate hierarchy and political constraints. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something so successful that the original injustice becomes irrelevant by comparison, transforming disappointment into the foundation for achievements that exceed every dream you dared to imagine.